the gym today because I'm working on that stuff. Yeah, and, especially for a fighter like me who's got some, you know, I may not be, one of the top 5 in the world or 10, but I've definitely got some notoriety, and so I've definitely got some sponsors or some companies that would love to get on board, you know, and unfortunately with the whole UFC Reebok thing, that that's all cut out now. Honestly, I know it was between us. I know it was a spy. I just didn't want to come out and say it. And then I can't remember if I put in the book or not, but after that same guy, after I tested positive for after Munoz for OxyContin, shows up in Hawaii for one day at my gym and asked me for pain pills. And then I obviously I told him no, and then he was gone. He was off the island and gone again. I never saw him again. So I don't know if the UFC may have even known that that Craig Jackson was doing that. They may have too. Craig Jackson is an amazing coach, and he definitely pulls out all the stops. And this sport is about winning. And when the higher the stakes get, the more you're going to see. When there's a lot of money involved and everything else, you're going to see things like that. Look at football. Yes, it was definitely tough. As I've said, in some interviews before, there was times when we would work for maybe 30 minutes or half an hour, and then I would have to get up and go take a walk. And they say kind of coming to terms with things is therapy, but then there's also that whole other theory of, hey, let sleeping dogs lie. So it was kind of a catch-22 for me with the book. Like, I think, yeah, a lot of it was therapy, and I think that part of recovery is you know coming to terms and kind of owning what it is that happened, what it is that you did, and admitting to it, standing up and taking um admitting to it, but at the same time, yeah, it was really hard. Yes, actually, kind of interesting. He moved up to my uncle Steve's house. My uncle Steve has this property on Mount Hood where my grandma lives there, and then he's got like 5 or 6 other kind of minions that live there, and they work for beer. They live up on his property, and my aunt cooks one meal a day for them, so they eat, and then they work around there, and then they kind of pays them in beer. He went down and picked up my dad from Vegas because my dad had cancer. Moved him up, built him a little house on his property, um, and actually so I flew up. I saw him a couple times. The last time I flew up was in May. I flew up for my sister's wedding. I had a chance to see him last May, and then when I went to jail, he ended up passing. No, I've got a saying: fighters are like strippers. They're not paying their way through college. And what I mean by that is there's a reason that girl's out there. There's daddy ripped up her teddy bear. Some, what I mean? And it's the same thing. We're all kind of fragile souls. That's really what I notice in particular with fighters is, generally it's the real sensitive guys that kind of wrap themselves up in this big I'm tough shield, and they've been hurt before. I mean, and then let's face it, your average person goes, wait a minute, you want me to bring everybody I know to an MMA event where I'm going to lock myself in a cage with another person and probably get the fuck beat out of me? Like, that's a horrible idea, you know? Um, so, absolutely, people that are drawn to the sport, it kind of is we're definitely a special group. Absolutely. You know, one, I consider myself a good fighter, but a great coach. And my true calling, I feel like, is coaching. I love coaching. I love working with fighters, and I think, being able to relate to them, and then also having the book out there, having material that they can see, so they can understand. Hey, fuck, he's been there. He's done that, and yeah, as far as spiritually goes, I believe that we all have somewhat of a purpose. Obviously there's free will, but we have, we make our own decisions in life. And I feel like, yeah, to some extent, I was put here to have a crazy story to hopefully, help guide people and, lead them and influence their lives, possibly. Obviously I had to go through all that bullshit. I had to go through everything I had to go through, so that one, I could relate to them, and two, that I could, be in a position where I could hopefully positively influence them. I mean, that's how I look at it. And really, like like why would I look at it any other way? I mean, you gotta take some good out of it. That's ridiculous. It's crazy. He called me the day, like 2 days before that, and he asked me how much I owed in taxes. I told him what I owed in taxes. That being said, I paid taxes every single year. I just, was a kid bad with money, and I didn't pay them all, and then fines and fees and everything else. That's a really good question that you just asked, and then, like, why did he do that? I don't understand. And then he goes out and says Chris Leben has never paid taxes. Well, here's what happened. He asked me, Chris, how much do you owe in taxes? I said, Dana, this is exactly the number that I owe in taxes. And then he said, don't worry about it, kid. I'm gonna help out. I'm gonna help you out. I'm gonna take care of you. And that's a quote. After I told him what I owed in taxes, he said, don't worry about it, kid. I'm gonna help you out. I'm gonna take care of you. Just give me a couple days. And then he never called me back. He went out and said Chris Lieben never paid taxes. And I actually called him up and bitched him out right after he did that. Like, you know, like, I don't know why he would do that. Why did he do the stuff with GSP where he said GSP was going to the hospital? I've known Dana, on a personal level for a long time. I mean, over a decade now. Here's the thing. He's got a gripe or a bitch about every one of his ex-champs, whether it's Randy or it's Tito or it's GSP, you know what I mean? Like, when do you finally come to a point when you go, maybe it's not everybody else in the world that's a asshole and fucked up. Maybe it has something to do with me. Not like one or two people he has a problem with. I think Dana White's probably jealous, more than anything. I think that's the biggest risk. That's one of the if you ever read the 48 Laws of Power, one of the rules is you never want to outdo your boss, and Dana always wants to be the greatest. So the only thing I think Colin McGregor has to worry about is just that Dana's going to get jealous of him and everybody that's interested. I think he's great for the sport. I think that we're half professional athlete, we're half WWE. Colin McGregor goes out there and he sells those fights, and he puts asses in seats, and that's what the sport's about. Kind of an interesting thing people don't realize about me. I read like 2 or 3 books a week. What was the last one I read? Raising Your Psychic Powers. The reincarnation one. I do believe in reincarnation. Absolutely. It's the only way all this makes sense. And not to mention that, but just kind of some of the stuff I've done with my own meditating and lucid dreaming and astral projecting. it's pretty blatant to me that the reincarnation is the way it works. That we're put on this world to just kind of conquer one or two little issues that we have. And then we have a whole nother life to conquer more issues. And you think about it, when does kind of the Buddhist philosophy is, when does consciousness begin? Well, where in the womb does it begin? Where in the womb do you become alive? When does that magic happen, or is it a continuous motion, like a wave in the ocean? It's always there. By the book. As far as the fans go, I've got my fans that have kind of always been behind me, and then I've got my haters that have kind of always hated me and wanted to put me down one way or another. So the guys that have always been behind me, obviously I appreciate them, and I'm very grateful. And if they ever do see me, don't be afraid to come up and say hi, take a picture, shake my hand, whatever, autograph. It doesn't matter. Like, I'm not one of those guys, like, that doesn't want to be bothered. So anytime anybody ever does catch me out, just come up and say, "Hey, Chris, how you doing?" Da, da, da. It's fine.